Hello, everyone. This is my presentation on exploring stratification and inequality. Let's go ahead and get started. I have chosen these three images to demonstrate social inequality, which are disparities involving gender, race, ethnicity, class, and other important social factors caused by unequal access to and the use of resources. I have chosen these three images because they display three basic factors encountered in daily life. First is a picture of a special education classroom in which I serve in as a paraprofessional. As you can see, this classroom is crowded, messy, and divided in half. I would also like to mention that this is a special education classroom, so this means that the students are not only receiving general education, they're also receiving extra services through an IEP. Education quality is directly related to social class. Schools located in lower class neighborhoods and cities are directly impacted by location due to the dependence of funding on local property taxes. This demonstrates social inequality because schools in an affluent community are provided with more money, hence better quality education and access to resources for students of higher class societies, and the opposite for the lower class communities. The classroom shown in the picture is one in a lower class neighborhood. The small campus in which the classroom is located on is home to an elementary and secondary school, along with a deaf school. Sharing resources among these three schools on one campus has greatly impacted the quality of education in which students receive. I can say that personally because I have seen many students be left behind, and that's why they end up in my classroom. Next image is one of a bus stop. Although I will not be talking about buses specifically, I will be discussing access to transportation. It is discussed in an article by Sen that personal ownership of a vehicle within itself is already hard to obtain especially in lower economic status. For reference, 61% of the lower class owns a vehicle compared to the 90% for higher. But it was also discussed that these ownership rates are significantly lower for people of color compared to white individuals. This demonstrates social inequality through class and race. Finally, similarly to transportation is housing. This picture is a sign of a beautiful house for sale in an upper class neighborhood located in Tempe, Arizona. It was observed in an article by Nowlin that in 2016, the average household in a higher class neighborhood was 115.4% higher than the average in a low income neighborhood. This income gap is what feeds social inequality. It is well known that the high class neighborhoods are often patrolled more by police, maintain better and contain better schools, and provide an environment to make high social connections for social mobility. While in a lower class neighborhood, these factors are not present. Let's go ahead to our next slide. Current class system in the United States. In the United States, there are four main social classes. The ones observed are upper, middle, working, and lower class. This class system is based mostly on economic factors with limited influence of factors such as educational and occupational prestige. The United States is also known to have a capitalist economy. Capitalism is an economic system where capital goods are owned privately or corporately through private investment decisions rather than state control. There are advantages and disadvantages to the current class system. To start, I will discuss the disadvantages. In the United States, the upper class is the dominant class. In the upper class, there would be politicians and CEOs, meaning that the upper class controls the means of production, aka they are the ones that are higher. So people like our president and our CEOs of big companies that we get our products from. The American upper class controls the voice of the people or whoever does not have the power to make their opinions heard. So this would be citizens and just people that don't have power in general. The upper class also has control of how much funding is distributed amongst different institutions. An example being the ability to decide which schools they choose to provide funding to, providing a higher opportunity for its students at that school than those of a lower class school who do not receive the best quality education. Next, positives. One positive is the incentive to work. Mobility amongst classes is motivating for individuals as they have the opportunity to earn more money as they climb the social ladder, thus boosting production levels leads to a higher national output benefiting everyone. The biggest positive, however, is the argument for fairness. It can be argued that individuals should be paid on a skill merit, meaning their wage would be fair. This can also be applied to how everyone should have the fair opportunity along with equal rights. In the picture at the right of the screen, you can see how much the US population is in that class and what occupations they typically work. Next is social roles, position, and class status. Social roles, positions, and class status all affect social inequality. First, let's discuss the anticipatory socialization and class socialization. In a video done by Crash Course in 2017, the host discussed that anticipatory socialization is, quote unquote, learning to fit into a group that will someday be a part of, such as gender or race. An example of this socialization is class socialization, which is where parents convey to their children the values that go along with their class. This concept forms an individual's beliefs and values, meaning children growing up with a desire to work, get higher education, or make social connections for social mobility. This leads to my next point, that higher education is often associated with higher class. It was discussed in the video by Crash Course that research showed that 38 elite colleges, including ones such as Harvard, Princeton, Brown, had more students that came from the top 1% than those that came from the 60% of the income distribution, and that there is a policy that has preferential admittance for legacy students. These are students that have family members that have attended the college previously. This policy and those like it reinforce the idea that social inequality is passed down through generations. It's often in these environments that the higher class creates social connections and opportunities for financial success later in life that wouldn't be available to lower class individuals since they don't have that equal opportunity to education. Next, we'll talk about class inequality. Pretty self-explanatory. Equality of opportunity is the equal access to quality education and other factors that prepare all individuals, no matter what class, for social mobility and success, primarily through education. The United States utilizes an open system of stratification, meaning a social mobility is accessible through this concept. Education is a social institution in which this form of class inequality is associated with. It was discussed in March of 2014 that the purpose of schooling is to contribute to the development of students as workers and citizens by communicating social, political, and occupational skills, along with fostering upward mobility. Although schools play a role in building up individuals, it also creates inequality. As mentioned before, occupational status of the parents and the greater the amount of money, the quality of education goes up. In turn, the greater the amount of quality for the children's education, the higher will their outcome come to in the occupational status as adults. The conflict theory is a theoretical perspective that explains the social behaviors that perpetuate inequality. As seen in the picture to the right, the conflict theory assigns the unequal distribution of power as the cause of social inequality. Those in higher classes containing the most power and the lower having the least. Through this theory, those in higher classes have essentially convinced society that they are more important than the lower class, giving them the most of society's powers and goods. The occupations in which they usually possess, such as doctors and politicians, are seen as more important than laborers, therefore receive better quality pay and rewards. The unequal incentive depending on social status and occupation drives people to work harder, reinforcing social inequality. In this slide, I have compromised a list of measures in which can help reduce class inequality in education. First is reducing class distinctions among students by making schools' primary funding source determined by the state government through proper funding. As mentioned earlier, schools located in lower class neighborhoods and cities are directly impacted by location due to the dependence of funding on local property taxes. This demonstrates social inequality because schools in more affluent communities are provided with more money, hence the better quality education and access to resources for students of higher class societies, and the opposite for the lower class communities. Second, stopping the expansion of charter and private schools that many students and their families cannot afford. This will stop class segregation. Lastly, supporting teachers financially will provide incentive for each individual and provide incentive for them to teach in lower income areas. These are the references in which I got my information from, and I hope you found this slide informational. Thank you for coming.